Hey everyone, it's Rob, and thanks for listening in today. As always, I greatly appreciate your time. Today, you will hear my chat with Blair Kirchner, Managing Director and Co-Head of Impact Activities at Kirchner Group. He is also a director with the Kirchner Impact Foundation. Blair began his career at the age of 12 as a summer apprentice with the Kirchner Group, which was founded by his father, CEO Bud Kirchner. Through his work, Blair and his team are experimenting with new, low-cost, high-impact investment models that can cost-effectively push modest amounts of equity investment capital and business resources out to historically unservable regions by harnessing the power of millennials to find, fund, and assist promising socially responsible businesses. One of the experimental models, the Kirchner Food Fellowship, has become an internationally recognized leader known for lean impact investment capacity building with a portfolio that now includes companies like Lucky Iron Fish, a safe, cost-effective, easy-to-use alternative to pills for those suffering from iron deficiency, Cully Cully, a consumer packaged goods company selling healthy food products made with moringa and is sourced primarily from small farmers in Africa and Central America. And Tomato Jos, if I said that right, Tomato Jos, a vertically integrated tomato paste processing company serving the local Nigerian market, and it's the largest tomato paste importer in the world. Blair is also on the board of directors for the Christopher Douglas Hidden Angel Foundation, a charitable organization devoted to enriching the lives of individuals with cognitive, emotional, and/or physical impairments through programs centered on the use of multi-sensory environments. The work Blair and the Kirchner Group is doing is really inspirational, and there are many nuggets of wisdom you'll learn during our conversation. So please enjoy my chat with Blair Kirchner. Blair, thanks again for doing this with me today. I'm so excited to have you on the podcast.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So cool. You're up in Halifax, and you said it's what did you call it? The shoulder time of year?
Shoulder season, yeah.
Shoulder season.
Yeah.
That's a little snow here and there, and then it's like summer.
Yeah, well, it fluctuates back and forth. Not quite snow, but certainly frost and freezing. It killed my garden already. So
it's crazy. I thought I'd start. I really enjoy quotes, and I thought I'd start by asking you about one that I read in some of our research on some of the important work that you guys are doing and that you're doing. It goes like this: there are no guarantees in life, except that everyone faces struggles. This is how we learn and grow. Some face struggles from the moment they are born. They are the most special of all people, requiring the most care and compassion and reminding us that love is the sole purpose of life. And that was Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. And I'd just love to hear your feedback on that quote from her.
yeah, I mean, it's a quote very, very close to us in many regards. It's really the guiding principle of the Christopher Douglas Hidden Angel Foundation, which was founded to provide multisensory environments to individuals with special needs in long-term care facilities, hospitals, and schools. Founded probably a dozen or so years ago after the death of my stepbrother in his honor. And it was really the techniques that are now deployed through the foundation that enriched his life while he was alive. And wanted to bring those to other individuals in similar type situations. And if you think about that quote and the reality that there are individuals that are not able to deal with or communicate or take care of themselves, and they really teach you a lot in life. To have the privilege of being able to understand what goes into an individual's life who isn't enriched like the rest of us might be, and to be able to provide some of the support and capabilities that the foundation does is really special to us, and something we're still thankful of Chris and his legacy for that.
Yeah, and the Kirchner Group, which is it fair for me to say it's a family business?
Sure.
And you're managing director, and your father, I believe, is the founder.
Right.
And I noticed this yin yang image when I was doing some of the research. And on the left side, it says promoting values, and then in parentheses, it says return. And on the right side, it says creating value, and then in the parentheses, it says earn. And I was fascinated by that, and I was wondering if you could kind of share what that means to you guys and why it's important.
For sure. And I mean, when you talk about a family business, despite the fact we are family, the whole organization and everyone who's part of our team is part of the family. It's a very close-knit boutique group, and we're very proud of that fact. So the organization, founded back in 1985, really on the fundamental belief then that every business can be improved and every business should improve the world. And in 1985, that was a pretty unique premise. There weren't a lot of B Corps, there weren't a lot of discussions around impact, triple bottom line, et cetera. And, you know, one of the ways that we sort of wanted to illustrate that was in this concept of a virtuous circle, and earning and returning, promoting values, creating value. And it really is the orientation of our organization to not have a divided line between those two activities. And it is so important to us that we really participate across all of those aspects, and don't define them as being segregated items. We really think that business is a very powerful entity for societal change, and that it has a responsibility as such. And so this virtuous circle imagery is really reflecting that belief of our organization.
So, you know, first of all, to be at the leading edge of that back in 1985 is remarkable. And then all these years later, so what would we be going on? It would be about 35 years now.
That's right. Yeah.
Pretty amazing. I'm curious, you know, for those that are in business and for those that aren't, you know, and many believe that you know, business is a capitalistic sort of entity and it's enterprise and there to just maximize profits at all costs. How can business and doing good in the world really intermingle? I mean, how do you guys bring that together?
I mean, I think there's a few ways. You know, the reality is, you know, we're fortunate enough to be a size that is sort of in the sweet spot, in my opinion, that we've built a track record, and we've built a client base, and we've built an organization that has the capability to give back in the plethora of ways that we do. But I think that business in general, and specifically, you know, leaders in the next generation of entrepreneurs that are coming up, that's really, you know, inherent in their DNA now, I find. And, you know, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to, you know, start a foundation or give back all of your profit to good causes. It can mean growing a sustainable, healthy business that creates jobs, that helps the economy, that builds a community, you know, that forms those kinds of relationships and networks that are so important in the world today. I mean, if you think about where we are at with all the challenges we face, the returning, the you know, promoting values, it doesn't have to be financially. You know, we look at it sort of head, hip, and heart. You know, there's the hip that's so important for financial resources, but the heart has to be in it. You have to understand and want to make a difference in the world. And you have to bring with the head the knowledge and the perspective and expertise that you've generated through your career. And that's really how we see the ability to commingle the two and believe it really doesn't have to be onerous whatsoever, and really should be that core values that you present to the world.
Are there any tactical things that you see in the businesses out there and maybe within your own business that you utilize or that you'd recommend to a business or an up and coming business that can really help them wrap their arms around, that hip, heart, head concept?
I mean, I think it's values, Rob. I mean, I think values are really one of the most underappreciated aspects of business. If your organization is started with the right values and culture and mission, and coming back to some of the work of Carsey and more recently Cynic on the infinite game, and not in it to win the game, but in it to perpetuate the game. That's really, our belief of business, and it's not a difficult task in my mind, and I don't think it should be for anyone that's starting a new business or starting a new endeavor. The reality is, if your heart and your values are in the right place, inherently your business is going to do good and do well.
Mm-hmm. In some of the work that you guys do, what are some of the mistakes you're seeing that businesses are doing, and maybe even or that businesses are that some of the mistakes you're noticing in businesses? I would even say those that are values based.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was interesting to see 12 or 16 months ago the report about the Fortune 500 CEOs and how the majority of them now were not putting maximizing profit first, and we're starting to come to that orientation that there are more important things than shareholder value. And I think a lot of businesses tend to believe that they have to trade off profit to doing well, to doing good. And I think that's a misdemeanor. I think it's unfortunate that sentiment has become popularized. I think we're starting to get the capabilities to refute that and to show organizations like ours and others that are not having to put aside profits in order to do good in the world. I think a lot of organizations, though, do believe that that's the case, and particularly as impact started to become a really trendy term and trendy segment, it's generated a lot of that belief that you can't do both. But I think, as some of these funds start to realize some returns and these companies really go on to impact the world in a positive way and create significant value and promote values. I mean, again, back to our orientation, I think it'll become more and more clear that there doesn't need to be a line. Again, going back to the virtuous circle, I mean, there is not a need for a division of those two realities. And you can define them, and you have to understand that you can't put one over the other. And believe that you have to give one to get the other.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious. These are challenging times. So I'm in the United States, and it's been tough on the economy. Of course, it's been tough on all economies. Many values-based companies have had to make some very challenging decisions regarding employees through layoffs, or maybe just even, having to downsize or right size or even close. Again, going back to this values-based, I'm curious, especially more in the SMB, a small, medium-sized business. What are your thoughts on making those challenging discussions to keep a company as healthy as possible? But really what ends up happening is, unfortunately, some people end up losing their jobs.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's no question that COVID-19 has changed the world we live in. It is the reality, and I think it will be felt for a long time to come. And there's going to be a lot of situations where companies have to make difficult decisions in order to stay afloat. It is never an easy thing to do. And, it is without question a challenge we're facing. People are burning incredible amounts of cortisol right now. They're in a fight or flight mentality. And without question, there's going to be, people that shouldn't need to be let go, that have to be let go in order to save a company. As a values-based organization, you sort of have to be that compassionate leader that understands that, you may have to make a hard decision and impact someone's life. And, that's never an easy thing to do. The reality is, hopefully on the other end of that, you're able to rehire that individual or a new individual to take their place when things, turn the corner. We've seen this in many different cycles of economic swing, perhaps not as extreme as this one. But, there's always tough decisions in business. And, the reality is, you have to make hard decisions, but sometimes you can make different decisions as well. Maybe cutting a few hours from each individual instead of letting an individual go entirely. Trying to keep benefits going despite having to furlough them, or some, situations like that. I think organizations are generally trying to do right on the employees, but also have to take into account, their entire employee base, and the market they're in, and the critical needs they may serve within a broader industry or to their client base.
Yeah, there's so many things to consider, and you're right. There are different creative ways that you can go about it. And if I've seen, and through my own experiences, you can go to the team, and if they are educated enough about the financials of the company and what's happening, in their particular industry or sector, they can actually come together and make decisions together in a very collaborative way.
Yep.
I was curious about your thoughts on ESOPs, employee stock ownership plans. This is where, for those that aren't familiar, where the employees actually own the company, they're shareholders. Alternatively, there's things like in the world like co-ops as well. And I'm just curious about your thoughts on that type of structure.
Well, I think, as with everything, there's positives and negatives with those types of structures. The reality is, it's always in the best interests of an organization to have the employees have a vested interest in what goes on at the company. So, to the extent that that's able to be done through a structure like those that you've mentioned, I think that's a positive thing. You also have to take into account some of the challenges when there are difficult decisions that have to be made, when you have 40 people around the table instead of 5, and that's just an inherent nature sometimes of the types of organizations and their corporate structures. But again, typically I would say it's always best to have a vested interest, and that goes whether it's with your employees or aligned interests with your clients and customers. You always want to be an open book and to be able to be on the same page to a common objective or a common goal.
I read about an initiative of the Kirchner Impact Foundation called the Exploring the Business Brain Model. Can you talk about what that is?
Yeah, so the Impact Foundation, just more broadly, is really trying to harness the power of enterprise to solve and address some of society's challenges. And its guiding principle is the Native American proverb that we don't inherit the earth from our ancestors, we borrow it from our children. And one of the activities is this Exploring the Business Brain Model, which is really the brainchild of my father, Bud Kirchner, around how to integrate neuroscience into business. There are so many elements of what we know about how the brain works that we ignore in business. And I think, as we're going forward in the economy and in business in general, there's going to be so much more importance on understanding how the brain works and being able, as leaders, to really be cognizant of that. There's things like, as you may know, something like 85% of communication is nonverbal. and 90% of cognition is subconscious. And business ignores so much of this. And so we promoted this site as a free resource for leaders, for students. There's some 50 plus articles posted on topics like communication, decision making, values in business, and trying to again provide a resource to individuals to help them have a competitive advantage and understand a little bit more about how the brain works. And it was really a result of again, Bud's many years in business, and then trying to dig into what was going on inside the brain when he was dealing with some of these individuals with special needs, and sort of marrying those two worlds, and just felt there was such a disconnect that it was an area we could provide some value in and some insight to individuals.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It really is. And I don't know if it falls into the emotional intelligence category. I'd be curious your thoughts on that. Understanding our minds and what's happening is so critically important, during these, during anything in business, whether you're thriving or you're in challenge or you're just in the middle.
Yep.
It's our ability to, be lifter uppers to our team members, to our customers, to our communities that are big difference makers. And
Yep.
we really need to be in tune with what's happening in our minds. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, it gets back to that sort of theme of a compassionate leader, compassionate warrior. We've even published an article on recently where, you're caring about the individuals that are wounded the same as you're caring for the ones you're leading into battle. And, you really have to be able to connect on, I would say, a more personal level these days, because, as I said before about cortisol and the fight or flight, the reality is that proverbial straw that breaks the camel's back is closer than ever. And, your ability to connect with someone and understand their specific situation and be able to really, build that rapport and trust and openness and is so important for organizations, for employees amongst themselves, for leaders with their teams, for all of business. I mean, again, it just, there's become such a emphasis on communication, interpersonal skills, and the ability to really get into that underlying challenges or aspects that each individual may be facing, as opposed to a blanket approach.
That's right. It humanizes it, and it's just how it should be, really.
Absolutely.
Can you share more about the Kirchner Impact Foundation? We talked about that a second ago. I read about some students who were chosen for what's called the Kirchner Food Fellows program.
Yep.
And curious to hear more about that and what you guys are up to there.
Yeah, so the Kirchner Food Fellowship, I would say, is one of the most recognized programs of our Impact Foundation. It was started some 8 years ago now. We actually just kicked off the program for our 7th year here. The genesis of it was really to try and find a more cost-effective way to allocate strategic amounts of capital at the early stage of enterprise in regions of the world that it's just not available or not cost-effective to do so. At the same time, recognizing that there's so many programs at universities and for students that are focused on entrepreneurship. And how do you build a great business, and how do you start a business, and what are all the elements that go into that? An incredible amount of incubators and accelerators to expedite that process for individuals, but very little focus on that same demographic that might be interested in capital allocation. And the reality is, all of those entrepreneurs on their journey are going to need capital to have their dreams come to fruition with their companies. And so we married those two challenges into the Kirchner Food Fellowship and launched it really as an experiment to see if we could address those two challenges. And you know, we've learned an incredible amount along the way. We've developed a program that is very much student driven through a concept called problem-based learning, or an approach called problem-based learning. And also we've given them discretion over the investment capital in that program to fund enterprises that are addressing global food security in some way. So we've deployed money, or the students have deployed money through that program in Nigeria, in Mexico, in Argentina, in the United States, and have really demonstrated an incredible ability to become effective capital allocators in an academic year, which was, a lot of people said was impossible to be done. But we're very proud of the program. We've had an incredible pool of students come through now, some 28 students over the years, and are really fortunate to continue that today and expanding it into Mexico, discussions in Latin America, Southern Africa, and also in different population regions in the United States for additional programs. So it's really been an exciting roller coaster to say.
It's amazing. It's amazing. And what a gift for the kids, but also a gift to the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you talk about, you've mentioned at the outset, the Hidden Angel. Is it the Hidden Angel Foundation? Did I say that right? Or
correct? Yep.
Yeah. And we talked a little bit a few days ago about is it called the sensory aspect of things. Yeah, I was trying to think of the European term of it.
Snoozling.
Snoozling, that's what it was. Thank you. It comes from Europe, you were explaining to me. And can you explain what it does and kind of some of the different studies that you guys are part of or becoming aware of with it?
Yeah, for sure. So, it's really designed to provide a calming effect for individuals that are prone to frustration, or can be stimulating for individuals that are more passive. And it's been deployed again in Europe for many, many years before it became recognized in North America. And really, we were one of the leading organizations to bring it here. And the concept is for individuals ranging from, we've even done studies on premature babies, ranging through to individuals with Alzheimer's that are belligerent and aggressive. That has really been a fabulous turnaround to show how they can become much more calm in their day-to-day activities just from a group of sessions dedicated to their specific challenges. It's very effective for individuals with any type of developmental disability, autism spectrum, Down syndrome, etc. We've installed, again, some 80 facilities across North America. There's been a number of different studies, primarily out of Europe, around the impacts that this has on cognition, and the reality that the majority of individuals, to varying degrees, have some atrophy of their neurons when they're not stimulated. And so, again, this is an environment where they can be appropriately stimulated to again facilitate those connections and strengthen the neurons, and frankly the quality of life is significantly improved, which is such an important element for those individuals.
So in a sense, is it like building a muscle, and you're constantly going? And then when you do a treatment like that, how long does it sort of stay with you, before you need to go back and do it again? Is it a daily thing? Is it a weekly thing? Is it, specific to the person?
Yeah, it really is specific to the person and the situation, and the routines are developed essentially on a customized basis. by physical therapists within each setting, or teachers within each setting, depending on the situation. And sessions can last anywhere from a few minutes to a half hour. Individuals again can have sort of discretion over control of what's going on in their environment by changing colors, changing sounds, changing music, or they can have a bit less control with more sort of the vibroacoustics and some of the touch sensory stimulation that is most important to them, perhaps. So it really is a customized solution, and is developed for each individual using the equipment that's in the facility.
And do I understand was there a American university that was doing a study on this, like in Miami or something like that?
So the Miami Jewish Center did a in-depth study on 2 individuals with severe autism. I believe one was in their 80s and one was in their early 90s. And over the course of a 4-week routine, showed an incredible difference in their demeanor, from aggressive to very much appreciative and respectful of their caregivers. And those are videos that are up on the CDHAF website that are, again, just astonishing to see the impact of the treatment of multisensory environment on those individuals.
Amazing. And as we're in the middle of this worldwide pandemic, I always like to ask, a question around leadership. And when we created the podcast, and we said this is about leading with genuine care, it wasn't really just about people in leadership positions. It was about all people, all of us. How can we show up and be the best for each other and lead each other? And so I'm just curious, what are your thoughts on how we can use this situation that we're all part of to sort of maybe change some of our mindsets and really lead each other in a different and maybe more compassionate way as we move forward?
Yeah, I mean, you always have to try and look for the silver lining, especially in a challenge as significant as this pandemic has been for almost the entire global population. I like to think, Rob, that there was a shifting trend to that kind of orientation, that empathetic, human, all one race kind of mentality before the pandemic. That said, I'm hopeful that it has shown a light on that in even a much greater detail. Again, empathy and compassion are themes that we believe very strongly in, that are so important to society, to individuals being able to understand each other and communicate with each other, and to really guide a collective world going forward. I think oftentimes a lot of decisions were made in silos. I think that there was not a true reflection of all the components that need to be taken into account on any given decision. I think that also has led to a lot of situations where we're addressing the symptom and not the root cause. And I'm hopeful that again, some of the silver lining of this pandemic will be the belief that we are all one, and we all need to work towards that common cause, and frankly address some of the incredible challenges we're facing, like climate change, like systemic oppression and racism. The world needs to come to grips with what needs to change, and frankly needs to be led by what's supposedly deemed the leader of the free world, and that's the United States. And I hesitate to get too far into this topic, Rob, but the reality is we haven't seen a lot of empathy and compassion come out of that leadership for the last while.
Yeah, I hear you, and I think a lot about this, and I think a lot about our history in the United States as a country, and I'm always hopeful that in these very challenging times, where it seems like there's sometimes no end in sight, that peace prevails and we come through it. And sometimes it takes, maybe the most challenging of times to help us all sort of wake up and come out and talk about these things and maybe get out of our comfort zones a little and start to see the light at the end of the tunnel and hopefully see a shift in that globally. So thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah,
and I know how compassionate and special you are, especially with, as I'm sure some of the viewers have noticed, the dad sign just above your head. So I know there's at least somebody that feels very passionate about you.
My pride and joy, Rob.
That's right. That's right. And some of the pictures on the side too. I don't think that's your doodling.
Although mine would be much better, Rob. I can't take credit for that.
That's great. That's great. Blair, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today and bring this conversation of leading with genuine care to the forefront. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure, Rob. Thanks so much for having me. I really applaud the work you're doing. It's an important topic of discussion right now.
Thanks a million. That means the world to me. And to all the loyal listeners, I greatly appreciate you spending time with us today. And I wish you all much love and gratitude.